let's run through the gears. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
What's up, guys? This is a long-term review on my wireless 14-speed setup. So I've used this system for 10 months now. I've done a gravel race with it, done a ton of gravel rides, some road training rides, also some fast road group rides as well. I feel like I can give a proper long-term review on it. Now, the root of this system is actually Archer's D1x wireless shifter, which is originally set up for mountain bike shifters. And this worked flawless for about 98% of the time. So let's go into some of the issues I had with it. The first major issue that I had, and many people will be concerned about this, is actually a water issue. I had this on my bike and I was actually washing my bike and I got water in through this little section here where the cable housing goes into the end little piece here of the cable housing. Water can actually get into that. And it was actually set up on my bike on the chain stays like this. I was spraying my bike down, water got into it. Next day, I turned it on and it died. It just wouldn't shift, wouldn't do anything. Pulled the batteries out, and that's when I realized there's water on the batteries, and I knew I had got water inside of it. I did contact Archer. They immediately sent me out a new unit. It took 2-3 days, and I was able to put the new unit on and start riding, after about 2 days of downtime. Now, this was an issue on the early models, is what Devin from Archer told me. He did send me an updated model, and when I was riding the updated model, I got caught out in the rain one time, and it was a downpour. It was definitely a gully washer. If you lived in Florida or the Southeast, you know what I'm talking about with these. So rain, water, everything was getting all over it. I thought, hey, it's the new model. It won't have any issues. Well, unfortunately, it did. The next day, it started shifting kind of weird, and then it just shut down completely, and I knew exactly what it was. Now, that was probably about 2 months from the previous water issue I had. And I contacted Devin. He said, yeah, probably what happened was water got in the same location. What they found the fix was actually putting a little bit of silicone right here. And I used some kind of weather strip cement. It's kind of rubberized cement that you use to put on like gutters to keep water from leaking through it. I just had this laying around. So I put this around the end cap here and then put the end cap into the shifter. Now, after I did that, I've had zero issues with water getting into it. Washed the bike. I've ridden in downpours, everything like that. So if you do get the Archer, be sure you put some kind of silicone or some kind of rubber cement right in this area here, so that way water will not get into it. Now, that was my second unit I killed. And I had a backup, which was an older unit, which obviously was not protected by water. And I took that unit and threw it on my bike real quick so I could ride over the weekend. And I killed that unit as well, so because it rained on me again. As you see, I ride in the rain quite a bit. And so that unit died as well. On Monday, Devin actually sent me out 2 units that were brand new. And this is actually my backup of that unit. The other unit I have on my bike, both of them I've now sealed with the cement. Zero issues whatsoever. Now, the word on the street at the time of the recording of this is that Archer is going to have a new one of these coming out soon. My guess what they would do is probably not have the batteries go in and out here, and it probably will be a little bit better protected from the elements. Now, the next issue I had with the Archer was an all of a sudden unexpected loss of power. The unit would actually just die on you. We're going to go over to the workbench and I'll explain what's happening when that happened. All right, so the all of a sudden loss of power that I was experiencing is with Archer's Sprint batteries. These are their Sprint batteries, and essentially, this is the original stock batteries here. These are so slow. They're slow as crap. I would not use these, honestly. I carry these with me as a backup when I'm riding. So you can see here that you got 2 of these here, 14500, 3.7 volts. And so you got 3.7 volt, 3.7 volt right there. With these, this smaller unit here, just one of these is 3.7. So you got 3.7, 3.7, and then you have a third one, which is another 3.7. So obviously this is going to be it's going to have more power going to the shifter. So it's much better than this as far as performance wise. Now the problem with it is, as you can see, if you put them together here, all right, and you put these together, you can see that the 3 batteries are not quite as long as the 2 batteries. So to fix this, Archer actually sells a different cap right here that goes with the Sprint batteries to take up that gap. The problem is, whenever you hit something really hard, like a pothole or something of that nature, these batteries can tend to, for some reason, jostle and lose connection. Now, I've only had it happen twice on me in the last 10 months, and it was like, you know, some really, really hard hits. You know, hits that normally you wouldn't want to take. But at the same time, if you're doing a race or anything of that nature, you know, you don't want to lose connection with your shifter, obviously. And the problem with the Archer is whenever you lose connection with the batteries, you have to get off the bike and you have to turn it back on right here with this button. Now, if sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. Actually, when it's happened to me, one time I was able to turn the battery back on just by pressing the button, but the other time I had to actually take all, you know, get my tool out of my saddlebag, you know, pull this out, pull the batteries out, put them all back in, and then it would start back up and I could start riding again. That was super annoying. Now, there is something I found that's actually really cool and cheaper than this option. Now, this here is actually some batteries off of Amazon. These are let me see, they're right here. Battery for dog watch. So it's a dog collar, and these are rechargeable, 14250, and then once again 3.7 volt. So you see that. The thing that's cool about these is these are 3.7, every one of them, and so now you have 4 individual 3.7. So it's 3.7, 3.7, 3.7, 3.7. So now the performance is even better than the Sprint. Now the performance is better, but the battery life is not as good. Battery life on these is around 80 hours is what they claim. So tons of battery life. Battery life on these is around 24 hours, I believe. And then battery life on this, according to my calculations and my experience, it's about 10 to 12 hours, somewhere in there. But in my opinion, this is worth it. Now, obviously, if you're doing super long rides or something of that nature, you want to go with that. But this here works great. And on top of that, I'm able to use the same stock, you know, regular end cap, battery cap. And because the length here is the same between all of these. So because of that, now I get super fast shifts. I can use the same battery. I have had 0 issues losing connection with this, and I've ridden this on some really gnarly gravel roads before too. So no issues whatsoever. And on Amazon, this is only like 12 or 14 bucks or something like that. And I'll put a link down in the description below so you can find those if you do have an Archer system and you want to, you know, upgrade and go faster. If you do have the Archer Sprint batteries, they send you this charger here. I think most of them come with this charger now. And it's where you just put the battery in like that and it charges it. Now with the dog collar batteries, they're super short. So what I found I had to do was I just took these tabs and I bent them forward, because when they come stock, they're just straight up and down. And that takes up the gap there, and you can charge the little dog collar batteries. Now Archer has 2 options for drop bar bikes. This is called the MFR, which is essentially you have a brain system here that you can strap under your stem, and it's got a 3.5 millimeter headphone jack that you can plug in here, and then you have a button, or actually 2 buttons. You notice I broke mine. I was doing some hacking with it and I broke it. Anyways, I have to solder that back together, but not a big deal. I'll do that later. And then you have the button here. You can put this anywhere on your bike. So anywhere on the drop bar. You can actually use it on flat bar if you wanted to as well. But you have this option, and you can buy these separately too from Archer. So this is a really cool setup. I preferred this setup because I could put this on the end of my brake levers. Now the other setup they have is what's called DBR. This is, you see the buttons here. You have the up and down button right here, and this is your charging port right here. The DBR is only compatible with the Hilux, TRP Hilux hoods, and essentially there's a piece that you can take out inside the hoods. I'll show it to you in a second. So you essentially take this piece out of there. You have to cut your hood a certain way, and then you basically screw that into the hood there. Now, the main downside of this one, it performs great, but the problem is the ergonomics of it. Now, if you're in the hoods like this, it's fine. You can shift both pretty easily. The problem is if you're racing and you're in the drops, so you're in the drops right here, and then you try to reach, you can reach that one fine, but you gotta have to like really reach forward to reach that one right there. I did use this one in a gravel race, and I actually was able to sprint with it, and thankfully I didn't really have to use that button there when I was sprinting. You can orient these where this one shifts to a harder gear. So let's say if you are worried about being in a sprint and you want to really hit that button there for a sprint, you can make it where it shifts harder right there, and then that one would be the easier one. Now, most of the time I always had this one set as my my harder, because it always was like forward. Forward means harder. Anyways, that's how my brain works. But yeah, so that was the main downside, was just the ergonomics of this. But this one is much lighter. It's only 17 grams. I mean, it's super light. It fits really well on there. It does have a little bit of, I don't know, some kind of cover, like looks like clear pieces coming off of it. And I haven't done anything different with that. That's just, you know, I don't know if the way the manufacturing was, it just has this cover with all these little pieces of plastic coming off. But that's just cosmetic, no major issues or anything with that. Okay, we discussed the shifter. Now let's get into the cassette and the drivetrain. Now this is a Campagnolo E-Car 13-speed cassette here. This is a 9 up to a 36 tooth. And as you see here, we have a 42 tooth extender added to the back of it. So as you can see from this, nice tight gearing all the way up. So you got 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. All of those are one tooth jumps. Then you go 16, 18, and then I think it goes to 20, and then, you know, so on. Anyway, so it gets nice and spread out up here as you climb, which is super nice there. Now this extender here is actually, I got this from Dirk Stock out of Germany, and you know, essentially you can see it's a 5-arm. He cut out the middle of it and drilled holes in it for me to get it just lined up there, because the Campy cassette actually has 5 bolts that keeps it together. You pull out those bolts, you put another one in there. When I first did it, I was actually using some bolts that had like a rounded head on them, like this. And the rounded head, the problem with that, it stuck out, and with some wheel sets, it would actually come really close to the spokes of the wheel. So then what I did was I basically took a little drill bit and I beveled out the inside of this, and then I used a beveled bolt here, as you can see. So these are actually from like mountain bike cleat pedals that I had laying around. And that way you can see they actually sink down into there, and they're not quite flush obviously, but they are much closer than what they were before. And that way I have plenty of room with my my spokes between the cassette and actually the spokes as well. Now when I initially did the setup, actually I used the SRAM flat top chain, and at that time I was using SRAM 11 speed rear derailleur, and I also was using just like a regular 11 speed chainring, and this would fit on these things. Now I did have to actually Dremel these pulleys a little narrower for the flat top chain, but essentially I didn't have to change anything else, and the shifting on this cassette was flawless. It worked really well, and there were several reviews online of people talking about using the flat top chain on their Campy cassette because they wanted to run a different chainring up front instead of Campy's, you know, usual, I forgot what it is, some kind of crazy BCD front chainring, or yeah, front chainring. So they would use this, and then they could run like a E-Car, or not an E-Car, but a SRAM Cork power meter up front, or a regular 110 BCD chainring up front. So I did the same thing initially, as I just would run the flat top chain, so that way I could run everything else. Now, the one downside of using the flat top chain is the rollers are just a little bit bigger. Let me see if I can get it here. So yeah, so the rollers here are just a little bit bigger than these rollers, really close. But the problem is on your cassette, if it's real muddy out or there's a bunch of crud, the roller can't get down into the cog good enough to get good traction, and it would actually skip. It didn't happen much with me because I only rode on a couple of muddy rides, but that was one of the downsides of running the flat top chain. So I really wanted to switch to the Campy E-Car 13-speed chain, because once again it's like made for this, so obviously it's going to work better. and it wouldn't skip in the muddy conditions, because I do use this for gravel racing, and sometimes it will rain. The 13-speed e-car chain is a little bit narrower in the middle, so it takes special chain rings and special pulleys. So I did eventually go with an e-car rear derailleur, and what I did with the front, this is just a chain ring here. It's a 110 BCD, and I essentially just dremeled all these teeth to be a little narrower, so that way I could run the 13-speed chain with a regular 110 BCD, chain ring and crank, and it worked great. I'd have a video where I talk about that, and I actually measured the teeth and everything. So, so eventually, what I did was I went with the e-car 13-speed chain, the e-car rear derailleur, and it worked really well. Now you can take this and make these pulleys teeth even narrower and just run it with the e-car chain, but I went ahead and decided just to go with the e-car rear derailleur as well, just to make sure everything shifted well. Another thing I will mention about the Archer shifter, in the settings on the app, you can do what's called overshoot, and it actually will take the rear derailleur, and it will, when you shift to a gear, it will go to that gear, but it will actually overshoot a little bit to make the shifting a little quicker. And so it will go further, then come back. And you would think that it would cause an issue, but it makes it shift even quicker, which is really impressive. So if you do go with the Archer setup, I would experiment with that overshoot option. For me, I made it go all the way to the, I don't remember, it was like 2 millimeter or whatnot, and I made it come back fairly quickly so it wouldn't, skip or anything. But yeah, use the overshoot. For a hack project, this has worked extremely well. Now, obviously, we did have some issues with the water issues and also the battery issues, but once we got those ironed out, it worked perfectly. Now, obviously, this is not going to be for everyone. So if you like to tinker with bikes and things like that, you may enjoy this. Now, with the issues, I had it for about 10 months now, and I've run into about 4 or 5 issues with it. And sometimes even with the major manufacturers like SRAM or Shimano, you may run into an issue with your drivetrain that you may have to iron out as well. So considering 10 months, 4 or 5 issues, that's not a huge deal to me. If you've enjoyed this video, be sure to smash that like button. That helps this video get pushed up in the algorithm so other people like you can discover my channel, and that would help me out tremendously. Also, if you like this content, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you in the next video.